Good morning, guys. Here I'm going to be running through some questions from the sequences chapter. You can see I've already completed all the work. I normally wouldn't do that, but I actually made a pretty critical error in my working out, so I had to restart the video. Didn't think there was any use of actually deleting this. So you can see here that we've been given a sequence. We're asked to find the recursive rule, find the general rule, find the first term that exceeds 1,000. This question I used a ClassPad for, and we'll get to that in just a second. For the first question, where it says find the recursive rule, you can see that I've got the recursive rules here. They're like the templates for them, I guess. This is the geometric version, which I used in this question. We'll get to that in a second. This is the arithmetic version. This is the geometric version for the general rule. This is the arithmetic version for the general rule. So I've got them there. You should know these. If you don't remember them, then you probably need to write them out a few times until you do remember them. I just whip them out just off the top of my head. You'll probably need to get to that level as well. They'll be on the formula sheet, but saves time if you already know them. And it'll show me that you actually understand the questions as well if you can just bring them to mind. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and try and find the mistake that I made. I did mention the mistake, the common mistake in class, and I made it. So I hope that's a sign for you to be extra vigilant about this. So pause it and try and find the mistake. I'll assume you've paused it, found the mistake, and now you can listen to me try and solve these questions. So first question, find the recursive rule. This is geometric. Clearly, because the difference between 3 and 6 is going to be much smaller than the difference between 6 and 12. So to prove that it is a geometric sequence and also to find the common ratio, I'm going to take 6 and divide it by 3, which you can see I've done here. 12 divided by 6 is 2, and 24 divided by 12 is 2. You can do that as many times as you want, and you'll always get a common ratio of 2. So now we're looking to find the recursive rule. We knew it was geometric, so we plugged in all the values, and here is where I made my mistake. I needed to say that when T1, make that a capital T, when T1 is equal to 3. Okay, so you'll remember I told you in class that if you don't put that, then you'll lose a mark. So that's really important. You probably don't need to do it here for the general rule because T1 is listed in that rule. Beautiful. Okay, so to find the general rule, again, I knew that it was going to be geometric, so I took this version of the rule. Pretty straightforward. T1 is 3. The common ratio was 2. Raised to the power of n take 1. Next, find the first term that exceeds 1,000. Okay, just ignore this for a second. So we want to find the closest term to 1,000, and then we can sort of make our way out from there. We do have a ClassPad, so there's a few different ways. For those that like algebra, this first method is probably the way you're going to want to do it. So we know that we want this value here, T of n, to be like close to 100. Sorry, close to 1,000. So if we make this equal to 1,000, then we might be able to solve for n, what term gives us 1,000, and then we can round up because we want the first term that exceeds that. So that's exactly what I did. I made T of n equal to 1,000. All right, so I'm using this formula. Equals first term, which is 3, common ratio, which is 2. So 3 times 2 to the power of n take 1. Punch that into my calculator. Let me bring out my calculator. Let's go to main. You can see I've already done it. So I solved. For those of you that don't know how to solve in main, if you just go to math 3, you'll see this solve function here. And it will give you this first little part, and then you chuck in your equation. All right, as you can see, I just put in this equation exactly as you see it, and then you need to do comma x. If you want comma, it's just there, because you need to tell the ClassPad exactly what variable you want to find. So comma x is the variable I want to find, close your bracket, and it gave me a 9.38. So if I was looking for 1,000, then it would be the 9.38th value, but I wanted the first term that exceeds it. All right, so if 1,000 is 9.38, then the first actual whole number term, whole integer term to exceed it would be the 10th term. All right, so that would be my answer. This would be my working out. Good. Now, there's also another way to solve it on the ClassPad. If you go to sequence, all right, so it's just on the second side. you put in your recursive rule. If you wanted to put in the general rule, you can just go into explicit and put it in there. But I wanted to use the recursive rule. All right, so your AN is your TN. TN times 2, you can see that here, where the first term is 3. All right, so the information we had here is exactly the same as the information that we've putting into our ClassPad. If ever you've got a contextual question, which is more like a linear example, then you might want to use, if you go down to this little drop-down box, you might want to use this version where it's A0, so the 0 term, the term before the first term. But in this particular example, I want to use the first term. Once you're happy with all the information you've put in, if you hit this table button, it's going to give you a table. Chances are it's probably only going to give you up to 5. I've made mine longer because I've already answered this question. But if you hit this button here, and then you can make the N 10 or 15 or 20, whatever you think. I knew though that it was the 10th value, so I only needed to go to 10. And you can see here that the 10th term, so N, the 10th term is the first one that exceeds 1,000. So this way is pretty quick. I'd probably use this way in a test, depending on how many marks. If it's worth like 3 or 4 marks, then you might want to put some of this stuff in to support your answer. But if it's only worth 1 mark, then clearly the person who's making the test is wanting you to get through this pretty quick. I'd be putting the recursive, the first term, hitting that table button and getting my answer and moving on. And that's it. So you can see that we've managed to work all of this out just knowing the sequence. All right, so there's a lot of information in these sequences, and they're very powerful. Thanks for listening, guys.